juries are waiting. I will hear any new argument, if there's any new argument that you didn't make last week, and then we'll indicate what my ruling is. Anything?
Your Honor, on behalf of Mr. Hernandez, I guess our argument is, as the court, I don't want to repeat what we said at sidebar, but the only relevance of the fact of text messages going back and forth is that Mr. Lloyd was presumably alive when texts were being sent from his phone to his sister. That is the relevance, and that is something which clearly the Commonwealth has a right to prove in this case. They are going to prove it in various ways. There are telephone records that can show that. We've offered to stipulate that he was alive. So on the that's one side of the balance. On the other side of the balance, Your Honor, if the fact that they were texting back and forth during this time period comes in without the substance, which the court has already excluded, it frankly invites the jury to speculate as to what is in those texts, and frankly to speculate that what is in those texts is much more damning to Mr. Hernandez, potentially, than the relatively innocuous content of those texts, which the court has already excluded. The jury can speculate Mr. Lloyd is saying, help, I'm being kidnapped, I'm going to be killed. I mean, they could speculate something which is totally unfairly prejudicial. We don't have any ability, really, to counter that. I don't think there's any instruction the court can give the jury, given this sort of dramatic scenario, which will obviate or prevent that kind of speculation. And so what ends up happening, Your Honor, is it ends up being, frankly, more unfairly prejudicial than if the content of the text had come in, which are relatively innocuous, and which, by the way, Mr. Lloyd's sister testified before the grand jury that she thought he was bragging that he was with NFL.
We're not going to go back over the...
So on balance, Your Honor, given the limited relevance and given the overwhelmingly unfair prejudice, I think the court's ruling on Friday was exactly right, and I ask the court to stick with that rule.
Your Honor, I would suggest respectfully that there were 5 text messages between them. There were 4 from Mr. Lloyd, and there was 1 from his sister. Those messages, as the court knows, we've spent a lot of time in trying to put together the case in a way that will show the path of after him being picked up, and then the electronic communications that are going on that can place in an area, show location, directionality, as well as the fact that there are other records or somebody else who would corroborate that, I don't think undermines the evidence. And as the court noted, that you had said at one point, you're not trying to try the case, and stipulations, obviously the defendant's willing to stipulate to a fact doesn't preclude us from presenting it. And they now are going to be asked, and also to the fact that we have the ability to have a witness in addition to a record, the fact that it's still relevant that that person would corroborate what the records would show and do it in a more definitive way, as opposed to leaving that part to a record itself. And again, I think is relevant evidence, and I don't see how that is so prejudicial. And clearly, just the fact of a text message, like a lot of these electronic communications through the course of the night, where there's no other information about what was happening. There was a number of usage of Mr. Lloyd's phone on the way down, and going to whatever, some contact with digital information was shared with a cell tower, that locates him. They wouldn't be now speculating, I wonder what he was doing at that time. Maybe he was trying to, call out for help or something like that. That's utter speculation. but the evidence that they would be able to see that during the time of the travel that these points were being made, and that we would have a witness who would at least confirm 5 exchanges at that time. And as I indicated, obviously going to the fact that after that time, the last communication being at 3:23 in the morning, and then after that no further communication, they can find that at 3:23 he was still alive, and after that he was no longer alive, which would be consistent with other witness testimony. So in terms of its relevance, I would say it's extremely relevant. And this speculation, we first went to the sidebar about something in the newspaper, that it was widely being reported about Trooper Johnson. Well, every morning they're asked, have you heard of anything? They've been directed not to be paying attention to the media. It's already in evidence, the fact that Trooper Johnson had looked at the phone and there were text messages there. So I think in fairness, I don't see that this is so overly prejudicial that they would be able to use other evidence, and the fact that then a stipulation, and the defense says, well, we'll stipulate to 1 or 2 of these texts. The stipulation, as Your Honor knows, is an agreement, and we said we're not agreeing to that, and then to suggest that, well, if in the absence of agreement, this should all be excluded, I just don't think that's fair. So I'd ask the court to reconsider its position and permit the text message without any other content, which we know has already been dealt with.
Thank you. I have reconsidered the ruling in light of the fact that there will apparently be evidence from phone records that texts were sent and received from Mr. Lloyd's phone and the time of those messages, and then ultimately evidence that purports to place the approximate geographical location of the phone at the time of the texting. It is not as if the facts of the text at issue, therefore, will not be in evidence. The projected testimony is corroborative of the record showing the time of the messages. The Commonwealth argued that it sought to elicit the evidence to show that Mr. Lloyd was alive at the time of the text. This is indeed precisely what the defendant has offered to stipulate to. I will not, however, require the Commonwealth to be satisfied by the stipulation. While cumulative of the records, it will not take much time and supports the records, and the testimony, which will be very narrow, is no more prejudicial than the records themselves. The witness will be allowed to testify that she and her brother exchanged however many texts they exchanged, and her recollection of the time of the texts. She can be questioned as to the fact that she and her brother were texting and the time of the text without directly or indirectly questioning her about any of the contents of the text, her reactions, her emotional reactions to any of the texts at the time, her reactions after the fact, after learning of the death. No belief that the text had evidentiary significance or any significance. The witness should also be closely instructed not to volunteer anything, either on direct or on cross, again, about the contents of the text, her reactions to the text at the time, or her reactions to the text after learning about the death. So in essence, it's limited to the fact that she and her brother were texting and the time of the text, and exactly what will be on the phone records in terms of the time and the phone numbers. I would be happy to give an instruction to the jury if the defendant requests that they cannot speculate about the contents of the text. The contents under our rules of evidence are inadmissible hearsay. And I can go on if you wish and say, just like during the trial, court makes evidentiary rulings.
Your Honor, I'm not sure. I need to talk to my colleagues about that. I just want to make one other point. I completely respect the court's ruling. I would ask that they not be allowed to elicit, and again, I think this would be the indirect kind of stuff, how often she and her brother texted to try to suggest to the jury that this was somehow unusual, out of character, had some profound significance in any way, shape, or form, do anything other than what the court has just ordered.
We agree to that, Your Honor. Thank you.
We can bring the jurors in. Let me just, we have 2 cameras today, right? No.
hear ye. All persons having anything to do before the Honorable, the Justice E. Susan Gosh of the Superior Court, now sitting at Fall River within and for the Commonwealth. Draw near, give your attendance, and you shall be heard. God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The court is now in session. Be seated, please.
2013-983, Commonwealth versus Aaron Hernandez.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Have any of you seen or read or heard or overheard anything at all about this case from Mr. Hernandez since I last inquired? There are no firm responses. Have any of you discussed this case in any way, or Mr. Hernandez, with anyone at all, including each other, since I last inquired? There are no firm responses. And have any of you had any difficulty following my instructions not to talk or otherwise communicate about, look at, listen to, or do any research about Mr. Hernandez, this case, or anything you think might in any way be relevant to the case? There are no firm responses. I also want to give you a little preview of the schedule this week. I mentioned that there was a possibility that we would be stopping early tomorrow, Tuesday. That has not materialized, so we will be back to our original schedule. We'll be stopping at 1 on Wednesday and Friday this week. Not tomorrow will be a full day. Thank you. You may call me.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sergeant Christopher Sissio to resume the stand, please.
Swallow me. Space. That you still on, Joe?
Yes, sir.
Have a seat, sir.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
I think when we wrapped up on Friday, I was asking you some questions about a route of travel, a couple of different routes of travel you had taken.
Yes, sir.
Okay. From exit 5, which do you also know that is either Robert Toner or 152?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Where does 152 begin in relation to Robert Toner?
At the intersection of Toner Boulevard and Route 152, in close proximity is exit 5 of 95, both north and south.
Okay, and the other day when I was asking you questions about getting on at exit 5, we were talking about going north. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just if you got on to exit 5 and went south, how far is it to the Rhode Island border?
Approximately less than 10 minutes.
And what, when you approach coming from North Attleboro towards Rhode Island, what would be the first city or town that you would enter as you came into Rhode Island?
Central Falls, Rhode Island.
Okay. Now, prior to getting to the Rhode Island border, about a mile or two up, are you familiar with an exit number 2?
Yes, sir.
And just tell us about exit 2. What type of, what's in that surrounding area?
Exit 2 is the Route 1A exit. If you get off at the southbound ramp, you'll be in close proximity to a plaza in South Attleboro on one side of the road and a gas station on the other.
Okay. Are you familiar with Collins Street?
Yes, Collins Street is in that vicinity.
Okay. And is there any cell tower location in that area?
Yes, there is.
Okay. And where is that located?
That's west of the 1A, probably less than 2 miles.
Okay. And so if we were coming from Rhode Island, heading north on 95, where would the cell tower be?
That would be in Central Falls to your east, I do believe.
Okay. When you say that plaza that we're talking about, if we were driving north, where would you see the cell tower, on our right or left as we're going?
If you're driving
North, towards
north
Boston.
if you're driving north on 1A, the cell tower.
I'm sorry, not on 1A, on Route 95.
On Route 95, Traveling north, I believe it's on your left, which would be the west.
Okay. Do you know where the Olive Garden is?
Yes.
What side of the highway is that on?
That is on the side of the northbound lanes of Route 1A and also 95.
Okay, and just setting aside Route 1A, just Route 95, what side of the roadway would the Olive Garden be?
If you're driving north on 95, it would be to your right.
Okay.
It's in that same plaza.
And that cell tower location, is that in the vicinity of the Olive Garden or on the other side of the road of Route 95?
It's on the other side.
Okay. Now, from that point, using that as the benchmark, where the proximity to the cell tower on 95, how far is it to drive from there up into exit 5, Route 152, North Attleboro?
It's under 10 minutes.
Okay. And sir, the other day you had indicated that you had taken a drive beginning at 2:33 in the morning from Fayston Street, and you had driven all the way back to North Attleboro, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And your ultimate destination was what?
22 Ronald C. Meyer Drive,
Okay.
in North Attleboro.
And your stop, did you make a stop prior to that?
Yes,
Okay, and where was that?
at the crime scene.
And just, I know you told us how many minutes you traveled, but what was the time that you arrived when leaving 10 Fayston at 2:33 in the morning and arriving at the crime scene?
We arrived at the crime scene at approximately 3:24 in the morning.
And then you indicated there was approximately a 4-minute stop,
Yes, sir.
and then you continued there to Ronald C. Meyer.
Yes, sir.
What time did you arrive, having left 10 Fayston Street, 2:33 in the morning, and ultimately arrived at 22 Ronald C. Meyer?
It was approximately 3:30, just turning 3:31 a.m.
Okay. Thank you. If I could have one moment.
Good morning, Sergeant.
Good morning, sir.
You told us about a number of investigative steps that you've been involved in this case, right?
Yes, sir.
And is it fair to say that you've been involved in this investigation from June 17th, 2013 until the present date?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you told us that you responded to the scene at Corliss Landing on the evening of June 17th, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall testifying about some keys that were inventoried from the decedent's person?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And am I correct that there were 2 sets of Enterprise rental car keys?
There was one set of keys, and on that particular key ring, there were 2 Chevrolet keys with 2 remote keyless entry devices that were, in fact, later determined to be from the Enterprise rental car. Yes, sir.
Okay. And did the keys identify either by license number or by name of the rental car company what their origin was, sir?
The key tag indicated it was an abbreviation of 2013 Chevrolet Suburban color black, and there was a Rhode Island, there was a number 442427, and next to it was RI, indicating Rhode Island registration.
Okay, that was on the keychain.
That was on the keychain, yes, sir.
Okay, and that enabled you and your colleagues to trace the car pretty quickly. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. Now, 3 days later, on June 20th, you were part of the group of law enforcement officers that responded to the Enterprise rent-a-car dumpster that evening, right?
No, sir, I did not
I'm
respond to
sorry.
that location.
Okay, you were not there.
That is correct, I was not there.
Well, I want to ask you about that one.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Okay. You told us that you participated in a drive, a round-trip drive from Mr. Hernandez's home to 10 Fayston Street, and then back to North Attleboro to his home. You did it for the first time on June 24th, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And there were a couple of other law enforcement officers with you, right?
Yes, sir.
And that whole trip was videotaped, right?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And I think you told us that you left Mr. Hernandez's home on June 24th at 1:12 a.m., is that right?
We left the front of 22 Ronald C. Meyer at approximately 1:12 in the morning on that date, yes, sir.
Right, okay. And I think you told us it took you some 48 minutes to get to 10 Fayston Street, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you got there around 2 a.m.?
Approximately, yes, sir.
Okay. And then did you drove back, right?
Yes,
From
sir.
Fayston Street back to Mr. Hernandez's home, right?
Yes, sir.
And did it take you about the same amount of time to drive back that night, June 24th? If you remember, sir.
It did, but we stopped.
You stopped on the way back?
Correct.
Okay. Where'd you stop?
We stopped for a very brief period of time to change the tape in the recorder, and we stopped at the crime scene for 4 minutes.
On June 24th?
Yes.
Okay. So, do you remember what time you got back to Mr. Hernandez's home on June 24th?
It was approximately 3:30 a.m., I do believe.
So you left Fayston Street at 2 o'clock, and you got back to Mr. Hernandez's home about an hour and a half later? Is that your testimony, sir? Yes or no?
Can you repeat the question, please? I'm just trying to make sure I have the math correct.
Did you tell us that you left 10 Fayston Street on June 24th at about 2 a.m. and returned to Mr. Hernandez's home at approximately 3:30 a.m. that morning?
Yes, now that you bring that to my attention, that 2 o'clock,
I'm sorry, I didn't
that was
hear you.
not correct, the 2 a.m.
All right, well, let's start again then. Okay. You left Mr. Hernandez's home on June 24th at 1:12.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What time did you get to Fayston Street?
We got to Fayston Street at approximately 2:37.
2:37. Okay.
Yes.
And part of that was that you stopped at Blue Hill Express?
Yes, sir. We did stop at Blue Hill Express and waited there for a period of time also.
Okay. And then you left, then you came back and you got back about 3:30?
Yes. We left Blue Hill Express at approximately 2:38, and then responded to Fayston Street, I believe, and then returned.
What time did you get to Fayston Street on June 24th?
I believe it was 2:37 in the morning.
Okay. And then you turned around and went back to Mr. Hernandez's home, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you got to his house around 3:30?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, all right. And that was with a 4-minute stop at Corliss Landing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, that was like 53 minutes or something?
Approximately.
2:37 to 3:30, is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, you made another drive on July 15th, right?
Yes, sir.
And again, you went with 2 other troopers, or law enforcement officers, right?
Yes.
And you videotaped it, right?
Yes, sir.
And now, by July 15th, you had obtained a lot of information in the course of your investigation, right?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. So you knew by July 15th that Mr. Hernandez was seen getting into a vehicle outside his home, and you knew what time that was, right?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. And you also knew that Mr. Lloyd was seen person you believe to be Mr. Lloyd, was seen getting into a vehicle at 2:33 in the morning?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. And you also knew, did you not, that based on surveillance video, that Mr. Hernandez was seen arriving at his home in a vehicle at approximately 3:30 or 3:31 a.m., right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. So you had in your mind how long, according to your theory, by your I mean law enforcement's theory of the case, how long that trip was supposed to take, right?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. It was supposed to take from 2:33 to 3:31, 58 minutes, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it was supposed to take that long, and part of that theory involved, of why it would take 58 minutes, involved a 4-minute stop at Corliss Landing, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, having in mind your theory of what had occurred, you set out on July 15th to recreate what you believed had occurred on the night of June 17th, right?
We recreated the route of travel, yes.
Yeah. You recreated what you believed to be the route of travel, right?
Correct.
And you had your blue lights on during part of that process, right?
I don't remember that.
Okay. But you knew, based on your theory of the route of travel, that this trip was supposed to take 58 minutes. You knew that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And who's driving?
Trooper Christopher Dumont.
Christopher Dumont. I'm sorry, Trooper Dumont was driving. Okay. And he also knew it was supposed to take 58 minutes, right?
I would imagine so, yes, sir.
Okay. And he decided, and I know you can't speak for him, but answer this question if you can, he decided how fast to drive based on that 58-minute time frame, right?
I believe the decision to drive at the speed was based on the information that we had learned through the course of the investigation.
Well, did you have some kind of independent data, sir, on how fast the vehicle that you were trying to recreate was driving at any particular point on the night in question?
No, sir.
So, knowing that this trip was supposed to take 58 minutes, according to your theory, how long did, in fact, the trip take you that night?
Which night are you referring to, sir?
July 15th.
It was approximately 58 minutes.
That wasn't a coincidence, was it, Sergeant?
It was just apparently not. It was the same time that...
It matched your theory of what had occurred on June 17th, right?
Yes, it did, sir.
If you had driven faster, it would have taken less than 58 minutes, right?
I do believe so, yes, sir.
If you had driven slower, it would have taken more than 58 minutes, right?
Yes, sir.
But this was a recreation designed to take exactly 58 minutes, right?
It was a recreation to determine if our time matched the time that we had based on the information in the investigation. Yes, sir.
And lo and behold, it took exactly 58 minutes, right?
Approximately 58 minutes, yes, sir.
I have no further questions.
Is that unusual for you to do a recreation to see if something's possible or not possible?
It's not unusual, no.
Did you want to verify that for some purpose? That you could drive it in 58 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what other information were you relying on to try and to establish that 58-minute period?
The information that we were relying on to establish the period was based on information learned in the investigation, including some surveillance information, some toll booth information, and I believe some witness account information.
And what about cell tower or phone records?
That too, yes, sir, that's also additional factors that were considered.
And so was that possible to drive, picking up a person at 10 Fayston Street at 2:33 in the morning, driving him back to Corliss Landing by 3:24,
Yes, sir.
and then spending 4 minutes there, and then traveling to the defendant's home? Were you able to do that by 3:31?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have nothing further.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Mr. Penn?
Thank you, Your Honor.
The Commonwealth calls Barbara Chan, please, Your Honor.
Right this way, ma'am. Please follow me. Tell me, sir, your testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Have a seat.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, ma'am. Could you please state your full name and spell your name for us?
Yes, Barbara Chan, Barbara-Chan.
And how old are you, ma'am?
I'm 30 years old.
And where do you live?
I live in Cranston, Rhode Island.
And are you currently working?
Yes, I am.
And the place that you are currently working, is that the same place you were working in June of 2013?
No,
Where were you working in June of 2013?
at Needle Tech.
And could you tell us where is Needle Tech, please?
It's in North Attleboro.
And is it, do you know the address where it's located in North Attleboro?
Yes, it's 452 John L. Deesh Boulevard.
And is that in an area of Attleboro that's called the North Attleboro Industrial Park?
Yes.
And could you describe for us, please, what type of company is Needle Tech?
It's a manufacturing company that makes medical needles,
And just describe the types of products that those are, please.
biopsy needles, needles for animals,
And are those very small items?
some, yes.
And specifically at Needle Tech in June of 2013, what was your job, please?
I was a machine operator.
And what type of duties and responsibilities did you have?
I did flaring the needles, laser cutting, laser welding,
And for how many hours a day would you do that?
8 hours.
And were you assigned to a particular shift?
Yes.
And what shift was that, please?
I was working third shift,
And what are the hours of the third shift?
11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
And what days of the week did you work on that shift?
It starts on a Sunday night and ends Thursday night.
Thursday night into what would be Friday morning, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so when you begin on Sunday, you report at 11 p.m. on Sunday,
Yes.
and you work until 7 o'clock in the morning on Monday morning, is that correct?
Yes.
And as a result of that, is it, on your days off, do you go back to sort of a normal schedule in your days?
Yes.
And does that cause some sort of difficulties early in the week, Sunday night in particular, into Monday morning?
Yes.
And could you describe that to the jurors, please?
I'm sorry, what was the...
Sort of when you come back to work on Sunday night, is it difficult to get back into that working at night routine?
Yes.
And as a result, and as well during the week, do you, well, let me ask you this. Do you have breaks during the course of the night?
Yes, I do.
And what were the breaks during the course of the night, please?
My first break would be 1:30, and my lunch break is at 3, and my last break is at 5:30.
And during any of those breaks, do you always stay inside of the business, or do you go outside?
I usually go outside on my lunch break.
And that would be the 3 o'clock one,
That's correct.
3 a.m.?
Yes,
And for what purpose would you go outside, please?
to take a nap in my car.
Now, I'm going to, if I could, Your Honor, may I approach the witness? Exhibit 88, you recognize the area depicted in that exhibit?
Yes,
And what is depicted in Exhibit 88?
that's the industrial park.
And looking at Exhibit 88, do you see the building that is the business Needle Tech?
Yes,
And could you just point to that for me, please?
right here.
And this area now, having pointed out the building Needle Tech, does that fairly and accurately depict the area from that vantage point above the North Attleboro Industrial Park?
Yes,
Just now showing Exhibit 88 on the screen. And ma'am, if you could point to the building that's Needle Tech, and I'll just point it out on the diagram.
this building right here.
This building here, is that correct?
Yes,
And when you pointed to it, you pointed to this general vicinity, is that true?
that's correct.
Is that a particular entrance to Needle Tech?
Yes,
And what is that particular entrance to Needle Tech, please?
it's the parking lot for the employees.
I'm sorry, 1 second. And for what period of time did you work for Needle Tech, please, ma'am?
3.5 years,
And how long have you been gone from there?
since December.
Of 2014?
Correct.
And during that period of time that you worked for Needle Tech, did you always drive up from Cranston, Rhode Island?
Yes,
And could you just describe, generally speaking, the route that you would take to get to Needle Tech from your home? in
I would
Cranston?
take 95 north.
And would you take that beginning in Rhode Island, 95?
Correct.
And what's the last city or town in the state of Rhode Island before you cross over into Massachusetts?
Central Falls.
And are you familiar then with what happens sort of on Route 95 as you cross over into Massachusetts, what that first exit is there?
I think it's exit 2.
And from that approximate location there, exit 2 to Needle Tech, about how long would it take you to get to Needle Tech, please?
I would say 10, 15 minutes.
And did you come into Needle Tech from John Beach Boulevard?
Yes,
Would you get off at exit 5 there?
correct.
Now, when you come into Needle Tech now, again, with regards to the exhibit that's being projected there, did you follow a normal sort of route into the parking lot?
Yes.
And could you just trace that out with your finger, and I'll follow you along from your viewer?
Okay. I would come from here, pull into the parking lot.
From
right
here, at this location now, you
Yeah.
see my finger?
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
entrance. And then I'll pull around the building towards the back.
Towards the back here, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you have a particular parking spot that you like to park in?
I usually park in front, in the front row.
In the front row, and if you could just point to approximately where that is located on that.
Right over here.
Right here, is that correct?
Yes.
Is that where your finger was?
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you recall going to work on Father's Day, June 16th?
Yes.
And did you report for work consistent with your normal time to go to work to begin the 11 p.m. shift?
Yes.
And did you take your lunch break as you've described it in the early morning hours of Monday, June 17th of 2013?
Yes, I did.
And do you know exactly what time it was that you left the building?
3 a.m.
Okay, and when you say 3 a.m., is that an exact time, or did you keep track of that in some way, or is that an approximation, please?
It was 3, close to 3.
Okay. When you say close to 3, what do you mean by that?
It could be 2:58.
Now, is there anything that keeps track of your time when you leave the building?
Yes. I have a badge that I have to scan to get into the doors.
On coming in, is that correct?
Yes, coming back in.
So not going out, but just coming back in.
Correct.
And could you tell us when you left at 3 a.m. or thereabouts, where did you go?
I went inside my car.
And was that for the purpose of taking a nap as you've described?
Yes.
And did you follow sort of a normal routine when you did that?
Yes.
Could you tell the jurors, please, what was your normal routine that you followed when you went out to take a nap?
I would just go into my car and set my alarm for 3:30, and I would put a blanket over my face so the light's not bothering me, and I would just take a nap for...
And did you leave your seat, this is sitting in your driver's seat, is that correct?
Yes, and I would put my seat all the way back so I can
And-
lay down.
And on this particular early morning, June 17th, did you follow that, your normal practice?
Yes, I did.
And while you were out there, did something draw your attention?
Yes.
And could you tell the jurors, please, what it was that drew your attention?
I heard a loud bang, maybe 4 or 5 times.
And did you recognize the bang?
I thought it was fireworks.
And could you describe as best you could sort of the speed or the space between these loud bangs that you heard?
It was 2 slow ones and 3 fast ones.
And at that point, do you know what were you doing, as best you can recall, right before the bangs occurred? Were you asleep or were you awake or
I was
somewhere?
half asleep.
And when you hear these bangs now and you think they're fireworks, do you do anything?
No,
Do you continue to lay there with the towel over your face?
with the blanket,
I'm
yes.
sorry, the blanket. And at some point, does your alarm go off?
Yes,
And after your alarm goes off, do you return to your work at Needle Tech?
yes.
Now, at the time you hear these noises, did you check to see what time it was?
No, I did not.
And were you able to determine where between that 3 or 3:30 that the bangs had occurred?
It was between 3 and 3:30.
Now, as you're laying there in your car, the seat of your car, ma'am, did you have, were you able to tell in what direction you heard these bangs coming from?
Yes, it was coming from the side parking lot.
And if you could point out on the exhibit, please, the direction of the side parking lot as you're describing.
Right here, this area.
And you're pointing to this area here, is that correct?
Yes.
You went back into the, into Needle Tech, is that correct?
Yes.
And at some point after that date, June 17th, now the early morning, were you contacted by the police?
It was the following week.
On the same day of the week, Monday morning, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Chan. Good morning. So, the best, in terms of placing the time of the noises, what you felt were firecrackers, the best you can say is somewhere between 3 o'clock and 3:30.
Yes.
And on direct examination, you testified that you thought that there were 2 slow sounds and 3 faster sounds.
Yes.
And there was some time period between those groups of sounds?
I would say seconds.
Okay, a second or 2?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when, that's all I have. Thank you.
Nothing further, thank you.
You may sit down.
Michael Rivero, please, Your Honor.
Right this way, sir. Please follow me. Please face the clerk and raise your right hand.
You swear your testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
Have a seat, sir.
Thank you. If you could please state your full name and spell your last name for us.
Michael Joseph Rivero, R-I-B-E-I-R-O,
And how old are you, sir?
34.
And do you work?
Yes.
Where do you work, please?
Needle Tech
And how long have you worked at Needle Tech?
for about 4.5 years now.
And could you tell the jurors, please, what it is that you do at Needle Tech?
Make surgical needles.
And what part of the process are you engaged in making surgical?
Part of the grinding department.
And what sort of work does that entail, please?
For me, it's taking long stock, cutting it down to length for individual jobs that are needed.
And are you assigned to a particular shift?
Yes, I am.
And what shift is that, please?
Third shift,
And what are the normal hours of the shift that you're assigned to?
11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
And what days of the week is it that you actually go into work on, please?
Sunday evening through Thursday evening.
And were you working there at Needle Tech back in June of 2013?
Yes.
And at that time, where were you living, please?
Cranston, Rhode Island.
And would you drive to and from work?
Yes.
And could you tell us the path that you would take going from Cranston, Rhode Island to go to your work at Needle Tech?
Route 10 to 95 North.
And would you pick up Route 95 North in Rhode Island?
Yes.
And could you just describe to us, please, as you're crossing over from Rhode Island into Massachusetts, what's the last town in Rhode Island?
Central Falls.
And from approximately that location there, about how long would it take you to get to your work?
About 15, 20 minutes.
And if I may, I'm going to show you an exhibit. If I may approach the witness, please, Your Honor. Exhibit 88. Do you recognize what's depicted in Exhibit 88?
Yes, I do.
And what's depicted in Exhibit 88, please?
It's an aerial view of my company and
And-
other companies.
And other companies there in the North Attleboro Industrial Park, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, when you drove to work, would there be a normal path that you would take in entering into the parking lot at Needle Tech?
Yes.
And could you describe that for us, please?
I would go up John Joyce Boulevard, I believe,
Okay?
follow that down to the stop sign, take a left, and then I would enter the back parking lot of my company.
Okay. Now, if you could point that out approximately where the stop sign is located? I think it's just off that photograph, is that correct?
Yeah, it's in the corner of the side of the
Yeah,
photograph.
just with your finger, you just point in the general vicinity
On
where
the
it would be. Yes. And I'll just follow you with my finger.
Come down here,
Come down here,
yep, and then come to the stop sign,
which would be in this vicinity here,
yep, and then take a right.
and then into the parking lot this direction, is that correct?
Yes.
And was there a place that you would normally park?
Whatever is open available.
Okay. What kind of vehicle were you driving back in June of 2013?
A pickup truck.
And in fact, sir, do you recall the day, Sunday, June 16th of 2013?
Yes.
And did you go to work on that day?
Yes, I did.
And did you report for your work to begin your shift at 11 p.m. on June 16th of 2013?
Yes.
And did you work into the next morning of June 17th?
Yes, I did.
And do you have a memory, sir, of where it was that you parked your vehicle that day?
On the back side of the parking lot.
And if you could, again, you point out there on the exhibit, and I'll put my finger down where approximately it was that you parked your vehicle.
It was roughly right here in the corner.
Right in this vicinity, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Now, did you have normal breaks that you took during your work period?
Yes, we do.
And was one of the normal breaks beginning at somewhere around 3 a.m.?
Yes, for our lunch break.
And on that day, now the morning of June 17th, do you recall approximately what time it was that you went outside?
I left a little bit late. I was finishing up a job. I didn't get outside until about 5 past, 10 past 3.
And as a result of that, had you intended to stay out on your break past 3:30?
Yes, I did.
Now, normally, sir, do you wear a watch?
No, I do not.
And you went to your vehicle that morning now after you exit after 3 a.m., is that correct?
Yes.
And could you describe to the jurors, please, what is it that you do out there in the parking lot that morning after 3 a.m.?
Usually I go out to my vehicle to pick up a particular radio station to listen to a talk show on the nights to stay awake and keep going.
And when you do that, where do you sit in your vehicle?
In my front driver's seat.
And do you leave the windows open, or strike that? Do you leave the windows closed, or do you open them up at all?
I open them somewhat for some fresh air.
And did you do that on this morning of June 17th of 2013?
Yes, I did.
And did you listen to the radio that morning?
Yes, I did.
And as you were listening to the radio, did you hear something?
Yes, I did.
And could you describe, please, for the jurors, what it was that you heard?
A loud banging sound, like fireworks going off. They were pretty, there was about 6 or 8 loud sounds.
And when you heard those sounds, do you know what time it was?
It was at least 10 minutes after I had gone outside.
Meaning sometime now past 3:20 or thereabouts, is that
Yes.
correct? And did you look at the clock to try and determine, any clock to try and determine exactly what time it was that you heard those sounds?
Not particularly, no.
And could you describe as best you could, for the jurors, please, the sounds as you heard them?
Basically like a loud banging sound consecutively, 6 to 8 times. Reminded me of basically I thought the fireworks were going off. Sounded like a report, echoing sound as they came across.
And as you were sitting there yourself, did you make any determination as to what direction you heard those sounds coming from?
No, I could not.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Rivero.
Good morning.
So, is it fair to say that your best estimate of when you left your job and went to your truck was about 3:05?
Yes.
And is your best estimate between the time you got to your truck and the sound of what you thought were fireworks was about 10 minutes?
Yes.
And is it fair to say that the sounds were pretty close in time to each other?
Yes, they were.
And they were in rapid succession?
Yes.
Fair? Okay. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if I could call Sergeant John Conroy, please.
This way, sir. Please follow me. Please face the clerk and raise your right hand.
I swear your testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. Morning, Your Honor.
May I, Your Honor? Morning, sir.
Morning.
Sir, would you state your full name, please?
John Conroy,
Could you spell your last name?
C-O-N-R-O-Y.
And are you employed?
Yes,
Where are you employed?
by the Massachusetts State Police.
And how long have you worked for the Massachusetts State Police?
20 years.
Are you currently, you've been injured, is that right?
Yes,
And right now, you're not working actively, is that true?
that's true.
Okay. That was a recent injury?
Yes, a week ago Sunday.
Now, with regard to your work, just tell us what do you do for the Massachusetts State Police?
I'm a sergeant currently assigned to the Brookfield Barracks of the State Police on the midnight shift.
And I want to direct your attention back to June of 2013. Where were you working at that time?
At the time I was a trooper assigned to the Firearms Identification Section of the State Police, also referred to as the Ballistics Unit.
Okay. And at some point were you promoted to sergeant?
Yes, in October of 2014.
And did that result in your transfer to the new barracks?
Yes, it did.
Okay. So directing you back to your time while you were working as a trooper, you indicated you were assigned to the ballistics unit?
Yes.
And how long were you assigned to ballistics?
13 years.
And just where was that assignment? What barracks?
I started at the Sudbury lab, then Maynard, and then eventually Lakeville.
Okay. And what is at Lakeville?
Lakeville, there's a crime lab. The ballistics section is there. There's a crime scene services section and chemists as well.
Okay. Now, with regard to your time, your 13 years in ballistics, first of all, could you just tell us what are ballistics?
Ballistics is, we handle firearms cases, firearms and firearms-related evidence, ammunition. We respond to shootings, gun possession cases. We'll go out to scenes. We're responsible for gathering and collecting firearms and firearms-related evidence, bringing them back to the lab, processing them. We perform microscopic examinations to determine if certain components of ammunition have been fired out of specific weapons. We also will do test firing to determine weapons functionality.
Okay. Now, with regard to your time back in 2013, do you recall at some point receiving a phone call on June 19th of 2013?
Yes.
And as a result of that, or do you know what time of day that was, day or night?
If I could refer to my notes, I've...
With the court's permission, Your Honor. Thank you.
Your Honor. On the 19th, that would be in the afternoon. I responded at 1:30 in the afternoon.
Okay. And, sir, who actually contacted you?
I'm unsure if it was the Bristol County Detective Unit or the Crime Scene Services section who notified us that day.
Okay. And as a result, though, of that phone call, did you go somewhere?
I did.
Where did you go?
I responded to a wooded area near the intersection of Landry Avenue and John Deach Boulevard.
Okay. And what town was that in, sir?
North Attleboro?
Now, can you just, excuse me, can you just describe the general area there that you responded to?
Yes, it was a wooded area, I'd say down an embankment from the roadway.
Okay. Now, the roadway that you're indicating there was an embankment, what roadway was that?
I believe that was Landry Avenue.
And so when you arrived at some point, was your attention directed to a specific area?
Yes.
And where was that?
An area in the woods.
Okay. And how did you get to that area? What did you have to do?
I drove to a nearby parking lot and I walked down the embankment into the wooded area.
Okay. Prior to going down that embankment, was there any type of guardrail in that vicinity?
I believe so.
Okay. Now, when you say this embankment, could you just give us an estimation of how steep this embankment was?
It was a fairly deep slope, a downward grade from the roadway.
And when you went down that area, did you locate something or see something?
Yes.
And just tell us, what did you see?
My attention was called to a semi-automatic firearm.
Okay. And where was that semi-automatic firearm when you first saw it?
It was on the ground in the wooded area.
Did you notice any flag or anything near it?
I don't recall there being a flag, but I know there were people who had arrived prior to me that pointed it out.
Okay. And just describe its condition when you first saw it on the ground in that area.
It was on the ground. I believe it had some moisture on it, some brown discoloration.
Okay. Just how about the area surrounding that? How would you describe that?
The area around it, there were leaves. It was fairly wet. There was some standing water or a puddle nearby.
And so tell us, what did you do once you made these observations of this firearm in that area?
Once I made the observations and I was advised that crime scene had performed their tasks, I collected the item.
Okay. Now, if I could let you in. So I'm just going to show you a series of photographs that have already been marked as exhibits and ask you if you recognize the scenes depicted. Putting what was marked 80B on the overhead. You recognize this area, sir?
It looks like the wooded area that I responded to on the day you were asking me about.
And when I indicated what I asked you earlier, you recall there being a guardrail in that area. Do you notice whether there was a guardrail?
I can see that there is one in the picture here.
And sir, this photograph here, does that fairly portray the slope from the roadway down to the area that you described?
Yes.
I'm just placing 80C on the overhead. Sir, you indicated you had parked at the parking lot and walked down to this area.
Yes.
Do you recall how far that was from this area?
It wasn't too long of a walk. Only a few minutes of a walk from the wooded area.
Okay. Just with regard to this photograph, 80C, is this the general direction from which you came?
Yes.
And you indicated when you had first gone to this location, it was at the intersection of Landry and John Beach Boulevard?
Correct.
Did you park in the vicinity of that intersection?
I did.
So I'm just placing an 80D on the overhead. Do you recognize this area, sir?
Appears to be a view down to the wooded area that I walked down to.
Just describe the vegetation in this area.
I'd say there was fairly thick underbrush on the slope on the way down to the area.
Placing an 80E on the slope, I'm sorry, on the overhead. Does this indicate near the bottom of the slope?
Yes.
And sir, you indicated there was some standing water in this area?
Correct.
Is that visible in this photograph?
Yes.
Where is that? You're indicating over here, sir?
Yes.
So now placing 80F on the overhead. Is that a closer up of the photo I just showed you?
Yes.
And from this photograph, can you see the item that you've already described on June 19, 2013?
Yes.
And if you just point that out, sir. Indicating right there.
Correct.
So this is now 81, let's strike that, 80G. Is that a closer view?
Yes.
And is that how you first saw this item at this location?
Yes, it is.
And what did it appear to be lying on?
Appeared to be lying on wet leaves.
I have 80H on the overhead. Is that just a closer view, sir?
Yes.
Now I'm placing 81 on the overhead. So You recognize this photograph, sir?
Yes.
And just describe, if you would, the condition of the firearm. At some point you said you secured this, you recovered it.
Yes.
And after you recovered it, just describe what you did.
After I recovered it, I placed it in a box. The white box is the background in this picture here.
And does this portray its condition when you found it?
Yes.
Now I'm placing A2. Is that a full shot of it in that box you just described?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so just describe, was there anything on this item when you recovered it?
It appears that there's moisture and dirt on the pistol.
And so, as a result of recovering and putting in this box, what did you do with the item?
I took the package and I returned to the lab in Lakeville.
Okay, and what did you do with it in Lakeville?
I entered it in to our evidence system and I stored it.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness? Sure, I'm going to show you what was previously marked J for identification purposes.
Sorry.
I'm going to ask you just to take a look at this, if you would.
Yeah. Okay.
First of all, is this in a secure condition, sir?
Yes, it is.
And do you recognize this item?
Yes.
And how do you recognize it?
By the make, the model, and the serial number.
Did you record that information when you had recovered it sometime either on June 19th or after?
Yes.
Does it appear to be in substantially the same condition as when you recovered it?
Appears to be a little cleaner than when I recovered it.
So you've described when you recovered it with certain moisture and dirt on it, is that right?
Yes, it is.
Is that showing in its present condition?
No, it's not.
No, I'd offer this as the next exhibit.
No objection.
Not its next exhibit.
Your Honor, can we come inside for a second? I'm sorry.
I'm placing 184 on the overhead. You recognize this as the gun you have recovered on June 19th?
Yes.
Now just describe, what kind of gun is this?
It's a .22 long rifle caliber Jimenez Arms model JA-22 semi-automatic pistol, serial number 1144296.
When you say it's a semi-automatic pistol, could you just describe, what do you mean by that?
Semi-automatic pistol means that for each trigger pull there is one projectile expended.
And is there some action that the firearm will take when you pull the trigger?
Yes.
And just describe what happens when you pull the trigger on a semi-automatic.
You pull the trigger, the firing pin is engaged, and as long as there is a live or unfired cartridge in the chamber, the base of the cartridge casing is struck, the primer is ignited, causing the gases to expand. The projectile will come out of the muzzle of the weapon. At that time, in this particular weapon, the slide will move backwards to the rear, and the magazine One is a magazine inserted, it has more live cartridges. The magazine is spring-loaded. It'll push a live cartridge up into the chamber, and when the chamber comes, and when the slide comes back to the front, there's another round ready to be fired. So when the trigger is pulled, a round is expended from the weapon, and the slide moves to the rear and chambers another round and is ready to be fired again. It's semi-automatic means one trigger pull, one round expended.
And how quickly can then a semi-automatic be fired?
It can be fired very quickly.
And what does that mean?
As quickly as you can pull the trigger multiple times.
So you don't, what if anything does the operator have to do to then do anything to be prepared to fire next time, after the first shot? Do you have to do anything?
Not if there are more rounds in the magazine. As long as the magazine is loaded and there's another round ready to be fired, it can be fired pretty rapidly.
Now, I'm just going to show you, you can see it from there. You've indicated this is what type of model, sir?
The model is JA22, which is indicated underneath the word model in your picture there.
And what type of caliber?
22 long rifle.
Is that shown here?
Yes, it is. It's underneath the model number.
In terms of the manufacturer, who manufactured this firearm?
Jimenez Arms Incorporated.
Sir, you mentioned a serial number. Is that right?
Yes.
Where is that serial number located?
Along the back strap, the number that you're presenting in the picture there.
And what was the serial number for this weapon?
1144296.
Now, sir, the day that you recovered this item, do you know if, well, let me just show you this first. I'm showing you the underside of the gun. Do you recognize, or just describe whether you see anything there?
No.
Okay, and when you found the gun on June 19th, was there something there?
Yes.
And what was that?
A magazine.
Okay, and just describe, what is a magazine?
Magazine is the loading mechanism for a semi-automatic pistol. It's what the live or unfired cartridges are loaded into.
And have you heard that referred to by a different name?
Magazine?
The magazine, this one.
Yes.
What is that?
Clip?
And the clip, did that hold the items of ammunition?
Yes.
Now, when you found, recovered this item on June 19th, just describe whether it was in a loaded or unloaded condition.
The magazine, which was fully seated into the weapon, had two live cartridges, two unfired cartridges within it. The chamber of the weapon was empty and the safety was engaged.
Your Honor, may I approach? Sir, I'm just going to show you, there's an envelope here. I'm going to have you just take a look at the contents, please.
Okay?
You recognize the contents?
Yes.
Can you just tell us what is contained in that envelope?
This is the magazine that was inserted in the weapon when I found it, and one of the two live cartridges that was in the magazine when I found it.
Do you recognize this envelope?
Yes.
How do you recognize it?
This is the envelope that I packaged it in when I returned to the lab.
Your Honor, I'd offer this is the next exhibit.
No objection, subject to our conversation in sidebar, Your Honor.
So we're over in the next exhibit.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I publish this? I'm placing on the overhead now what's been marked Exhibit 185. Back of that envelope, you recognize the initials there?
Yes.
I'm placing this now on the overhead and ask you if you recognize that.
Yes.
And that is?
And that's the magazine that was in the weapon when I found it.
And when you found it, was there any writing on it?
No,
Do you recognize the writing that's on it currently?
I do.
Okay, and whose writing is that?
That is my right.
Is that logged in under a particular case number?
Yes. The case number and the item number are on it.
And the item number is what?
14-1,
Case number?
13-11925.
Now, you indicated when you found this item, it had 2 live cartridges,
Correct.
and the item I just showed you in this envelope, first one to show you the item. Recognize that, sir?
Yes, that is a live cartridge.
And what caliber cartridge is it?
22 long rifle.
There's some writing on that cartridge as well.
There is.
Who put that there?
I did.
Now, you described this as a 22 caliber long rifle,
Correct.
and just describe this item. What are the components?
That's a live or an unfired cartridge. The area at the top is the projectile. This is lead projectile. This is the cartridge casing. Underneath and in here, there is gunpowder.
Okay. And this is obviously intact.
Yes.
Did you also examine the base of this?
Yes.
And just tell us what you found when you did that.
The letters REM, which stand for Remington, the manufacturer of that round.
And what is this cartridge casing made of?
The casing is brass,
Okay. And what about the projectile part?
and that is lead.
Now, sir, you had indicated that there were 2 live cartridges when you had recovered this item. Is that right?
Yes.
And do you know what happened to the other one?
Yes.
And what is that?
I used it to test fire the weapon.
Okay, and why did you do that?
In order to determine if the weapon was functional and the ammunition was functional.
Is that part of your duties as a member of the ballistics team?
Yes.
John, if I could approach. I'm just going to show you another envelope. First ask you if you recognize the envelope.
Yes.
And what do you recognize that to be?
It's the envelope that I placed the results of my test firing in,
And how do you recognize the envelope?
by the case number and the writing, the indication, the item number, and the writing that it is a test fire.
And those items there, just describe what they are.
But I have a spent projectile and a discharge cartridge casing, which was the result of my test firing of the weapon.
And I'll offer this as the next exhibit.
No objection, subject to our conversation at sidebar.
Next exhibit. Thank you. I'm going to publish this tonight. Placing 186, the items containing that envelope on the overhead. Recognize that, sir, as the shell casing I just showed you.
Yes.
And again, what caliber is this?
22 long rifle.
And the writing on that cartridge casing is whose?
That's my writing.
Can you read that already, sir?
Yes.
And what does that say?
It says REM.
And what does that stand for?
Stands for Remington.
And is that a manufacturer?
Yes, it is.
And so what is this cartridge casing made of?
Brass.
So that item is now on the overhead. What is that?
That's a lead spent projectile.
And as you've indicated, that's a .22 caliber.
Yes.
As you've indicated, when you first received this was intact and was located in the clip of the gun,
Yes,
and you did a test firing.
I did.
Just describe the results of your test firing.
I took the weapon and test fired it using one of the two recovered live cartridges, shot it into our water tank, and the discharge cartridge casing and spent projectile, which you were just showing, were the results of my test fire.
Were there any malfunctions?
No, there weren't.
And as a result of that, did you certify the ammunition as well as the firearm?
I did.
And sir, just the barrel length of this item is what?
2.5 inches.
Now, sir, did you have further involvement in the investigation into the death of Odin Lloyd?
I did.
And do you recall the next occasion that you were involved in the case?
June 20th.
And on that date, did you receive a phone call?
I did.
Approximately what time?
I responded, I got to the scene at 7:55, so I would say probably around 7 p.m.
And who had called you?
I believe it was somebody from Bristol County Detective Unit.
And when you went to the scene, strike that, where did you go to meet somebody?
I went to the parking lot of Enterprise Rent-A-Car at 365 East Washington Street in North Attleboro.
And did you meet any fellow troopers or law enforcement officers?
I did.
And as a result of meeting with, did somebody give you something?
Yes.
And who gave you something?
Trooper David Mackin from the Crime Scene Services section.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach? I'm just going to show you this envelope. Actually, take a look. Contents. Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
The .45 caliber discharge cartridge casing with the head stamp of Federal.
And do you recognize that as the item that Trooper Mackin gave to you on that date at the Enterprise parking lot?
Yes.
If I can publish this item, previously marked Exhibit 125. So you recognize on the overhead this handwriting?
Yes.
Whose handwriting is that?
That's Sergeant Stephen Walsh.
Did you do something with this item?
I brought it back to the lab.
And what did you do with it at the lab?
Turned it over to Sergeant Walsh.
And who was Sergeant Walsh?
He was my sergeant at the time of the Ballistics section in Lakeville.
So you indicated this was a .45 caliber Federal auto?
Yes.
And sir, did you have another occasion to be involved in the recovery of certain items in this case?
I did.
And just tell us about that.
On June 22nd, I was called by somebody from the Bristol County Detective Unit.
And as a result of that call, did you go somewhere?
I did.
Where did you go?
22 Ronald Meyer Drive in North Attleboro.
And just describe that. Was that a home?
Yes.
And when you arrived there, did you recover an item from somebody?
I did.
And what type of item did you recover?
I recovered one box containing 28 .22 long rifle caliber live cartridges.
And where did you recover that, sir?
That was in an open safe located on the floor of the dining room of the residence.
And Your Honor, may I approach? I'm going to show you what was marked Exhibit 124. Do you recognize that item, sir?
Yes.
I guess for starters, I've handed you a box, is that right?
Yes.
And there's contents in the box?
Yes.
Okay. And what does the box contain?
The box contains multiple .22 long rifle caliber live cartridges.
Okay. Do you know how many come in that box?
How many come in if it's full?
Yes, sir.
Usually it's 50.
Did you count up how many rounds were in this particular box?
I did.
And how many did you find?
There are 28.
And if I could use the later on. We have now 124. Is that the box I just showed you?
Yes.
And this box is what? What type of item?
It's a box containing ammunition.
The manufacturer?
The manufacturer is Remington.
Can you indicate how many rounds, sir, contained?
There were 28.
I'm just opening this here. You see some of the 28?
Yes.
So I'm just showing you. Is that the head stamp?
It is.
What is the head stamp there?
The letters REM.
And is that also 22 caliber long rifle ammunition?
Yes.
Now, sir, did you do anything with that ammunition?
I did.
What did you do?
I test fired one of the live cartridges from that box
And how did you test fire it?
using a weapon from section inventory.
And what were the results of your testing that ammunition?
The ammunition functioned properly.
And I may approach? I'm just going to show you the book here. Do you recognize it?
Yes.
What do you recognize that to be?
The results of my test firing one of the rounds, the discharged cartridge casing and a spent projectile.
This is the
No objection.
Can I publish this, Your Honor? So this is now the mark 187. What's your initial, sir?
Layout.
that one part of your test firearm?
Yes.
And what was that?
That is the discharge cartridge casing from my test firearm.
And the head stamp being the same?
Yes.
And placing on the overhead, this next item, you recognize that?
Yes.
And what is that?
That's a lead spent projectile, which was a result of my test firearm.
Sir, there's a mushroom shape to this, can you explain that?
The mushroom shape is that there was, in basic terms, almost kind of a divot on the nose of the projectile, so that when it comes into resistance, it opens up and gives you the mushroom shape that you see before you there. When I test fired it into the water, it opened up and became the condition that I pictured it.
Was there anything different, just in terms of test firing, when it hit, when it made the impact, it caused it to make the shape, is that true?
Yes.
Thanks, sir. I don't know if there are questions, please.
Your Honor, it's going to take me about 2 minutes to collect exhibits, if that's okay. Good morning, Sergeant.
Good morning, sir.
You told us that on June 19th, you recovered this .22 caliber Hernandez in the wooded area off Landry Avenue, right?
Right.
Okay. And I think you told us that when you recovered it, it had brown discoloration on it. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it is.
So, sir, I'm going to show you what you looked at on direct. Exhibit 82. Recall that's what this firearm looked like when you recovered it?
Yes.
And I'll show you 81, a little closer up.
Yes.
That's what it looked like, right?
Right.
Now, you've looked at thousands of firearms in the course of your work in the ballistics unit. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Does that look like rust to you, Sergeant?
It could be rust.
Now, you told us that on June 20th, in the evening, you recovered a shell casing that was given to you in the parking lot at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, right?
Yes.
Okay. And, well, before we do that, let me just get back to the 22 for just a second. I apologize. This is Exhibit 184. This is the 22.
Okay.
So would you agree with me, Sergeant, show you one side, the other side. This particular item has been, I think he said direct, it's been cleaned up, right?
Yes, it has.
Significantly cleaned up over the photograph I just showed you a minute ago, right?
Yes.
Okay, who did that?
Who cleaned the weapon?
Yes, sir.
I did.
So on the 20th, you go to Enterprise and you get this casing. And let's see if I can show you that casing again. Find it. Thank you, Mr. Furman, very much. It's Exhibit 125. All right. That's Exhibit 125. That's the casing you recovered in the parking lot, right?
Yes.
Okay. And when you recovered that casing, it was handed to you by, you said, Trooper Mackin of Crime Scene Services.
Yes.
All right. It didn't have blue chewing gum stuck to it when you got it, did it?
Not when I got it, no.
Okay. When you got it, it basically looked like this.
That's correct.
So you don't know anything about it? Okay. Anything that happened involving blue chewing gum in this casing, that happened before you got there. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it is.
Now, at some point, you told us that you test fired the Hernandez, the 22, right?
Right.
Okay. And you told us that when you recovered it, there were two bullets, or what did you call them, cartridges?
Live cartridges, unfired cartridges.
All right, unfired cartridges in the magazine.
That's correct.
All right, let me see if I can find it. .186. You fired one of them. You test fired one of them, right?
Yes.
And I believe that's. Let me approach Your Honor. I don't want to make a mistake. Showing you Exhibit 186, and handing you what's in there.
Thank you.
Was that the cartridge that was inside the Hernandez magazine that you testified?
Yes.
Okay.
For the envelope?
Sure.
You're welcome.
I think there's one that's unfired. That might be 185. Let's see. Find that one. Here it is. Let me try it this way, I'm sorry. This is 185. Is that the magazine and the
live cartridge?
The live cartridge that was inside the magazine?
Yes, sir.
That was inside the magazine of the 22 that you found off of Landry Avenue, well, that was recovered off of Landry Avenue?
Correct.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So now, I want to show you, I took this out of the bag. I'm showing you Exhibit 185. This is the live cartridge that was taken out of the 22 that was recovered on Landry Avenue.
Okay.
That's right. That's very good. All right. That's 185. That was taken out of the firearm that was recovered on Landry Avenue, right?
Right.
Okay. Now I'm going to show you, this is 124. This is the box of 22 caliber cartridges that you just testified was recovered from the home of Aaron Hernandez on June 22nd, 2013, okay?
Okay.
So I've taken out one of the cartridges from that box, one from 124, and I'm going to put it on the overhead next to 185, which you recovered from the Landry Avenue. Okay?
Okay.
You see those two next to each other?
I can.
Okay. Would you agree with me, Sergeant Conroy, that they are not identical?
Yes.
Oops. Now, sir, you were in the ballistics unit for 13 years, right?
Yes.
And you're no longer there.
Correct.
Now, there are officers of different ranks in the ballistics unit, right?
Yes.
Including sergeants, such as Sergeant Walsh, right?
Right.
Did you ask to get out of the ballistics unit, sir?
No.
I have no further questions.
When you were promoted, did that result in your having to move?
It did.
Okay. Did it have anything to do with your performance or the time that you've spent for 13 years in the ballistic unit?
No.
Okay. Just part of you get promoted, they assign
It's
you?
fairly common on my job that once somebody gets promoted to be transferred.
Do you know what the gun, the 22 caliber firearm here, this material is made of?
Some kind of metal.
Okay. And you've indicated there were some questions about the cleanup. You cleaned up this firearm, is that right?
I did.
Would that be part of your normal protocol to do that before you then try to fire the firearm?
Yes.
Okay. And when you cleaned it up, did you find any evidence that it was rusty?
There was discoloration. It may well have been some rust or dirt or something from the leaves. It could have been rust.
Okay, when you say it could have been, what are you relying on, either the photographs or your own memory?
My own memory.
Okay, and so with regard to rust, you've seen rusty firearms, is that true?
I have.
And is there corrosion that you would then see on the firearm as a result of the rust?
Sometimes it depends on the amount of rust or the amount of time that the weapon has been exposed to the elements like that.
Okay, do you see any corrosion or rust on this firearm?
Not after I cleaned it.
Okay. So, and just if you would, describe how did you clean it?
I cleaned it using paper towel, brush, and some gun lubricant.
Okay, okay. And to the extent that it's in its condition today is after you essentially wiped it down with the brush and the lubricant and the paper towels. Is there anything different about it?
No, it's cleaner than when I found it, but
Okay.
that's about it.
And with regard to the area in which you found it, I had previously shown you a photograph. Was there dirt and leaves and other debris in that area?
Yes.
Do you know whether there had been any rain in the 24 hours prior to your recovery?
I don't recall what the weather had been in the previous 20
Okay. What happens if you left an item, a firearm, out in the rain? What would you anticipate would be the result to the finish?
Left it out in the rain?
Yes, sir.
I believe rust would form.
Okay. And how quickly would the rust form?
It can be pretty quickly.
Okay. And sir, when you said you were handed the .45 caliber shell casing from Trooper Mackin,
Yes.
now handed, how did you recover that? Well, first of all, how did he hand it to you? Did he have anything on his hands?
Latex gloves.
And how did you recover it?
With latex gloves.
Okay, so we're not talking about handing it with ungloved hands.
No.
And you indicated it was separated, or to your knowledge, you just received the shell casing itself.
I just received the shell casing all on
So
just
did-
itself.
Did you ever see anything attached to it?
No.
Would it be unusual for you as a ballistics officer for those number of years, when you recover ballistic evidence, if there was some other potential evidence attached or affixed to it that some other unit might retrieve that first before you ultimately got the item?
Yes.
Okay. And Dave Mackin, what unit is he assigned to?
Crime Scene Services section?
And you were asked about the ammunition with the different coloration of the lead projectile.
Yes.
Is there anything about that ammunition that would make it incapable of being fired in item 184?
Are you asking if either of those rounds could be fired from that?
Yes, this box of ammunition, if we put it in the magazine and loaded it, would that fire in this firearm?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you came, your duties are as a ballistic officer, when you had gone to Ronald C. Meyer on June 22nd, was to collect any ballistic evidence from that scene. Is that right?
It is.
And so you collected this box of .22 caliber ammunition. Is that
I
right?
did.
And you said you collected it from a lockbox.
Yes.
Was there any firearm found in that lockbox?
No.
Was there any firearm that was recovered from the house turned over to you that night?
We approach, Your Honor.
A firearm found in the house on June 22nd, is that true?
Yes, that's true.
And there was no .45 caliber firearm recovered in the house, is that true?
That's true.
If I could have one moment, Your Honor. Nothing further, thank you, sir.
Just very briefly. Do you have any training in metallurgy, sir?
No.
It's fair to say that you have no idea how long it would take for that rust or whatever it is to form on a gun. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
And you were asked again on redirect about the projectiles. the projectile found, you test fired the projectile found inside the magazine that was in the 22 off of Landry Avenue, right?
Right.
Okay. And I'm showing you 186, which, if you testified, was the projectile that you test fired. Recall that testimony?
Yes.
Now, you also test fired the projectile from the, you test fired one of the cartridges found in that box of ammunition that was found in Mr. Hernandez's home, right?
Yes.
And I think that Mr. McCauley had asked you earlier about some mushroom-shaped, that the tip of the ammunition found in that box of cartridges, when you test fired into a water
tank.
There was a mushroom-shaped
Objection, Your Honor. Just beyond the scope.
at the end. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, sir.
Do you recall that that the test-fired cartridge from the box of, showing to you, 187. Okay, I'm going to put this one on as well.
Okay.
So we've got 186, which was the one from the 22 on Landry Avenue, and now this is 186, and now this is 187. Sorry. The one on the bottom, sir. Let me make it bigger.
I can see them.
Okay, can you see it? No, I'm going to bring it over and show it to you.
Okay.
187 is the one from the box. And 186 is the one from the Landry Avenue.
Okay.
So let me just show it to you, okay? You look at them, please. So. Would you agree with me, sir, that the one you test fired from Landry Avenue, 186, has this mushroom, I'm sorry, the one that you tested from the box of ammunition, 187, developed a mushroom-shaped tip when you fired into the water tank, right?
Yes.
That was 187 from the box of ammunition.
Okay.
186, the one that you test fired from the cartridge or from the magazine from Landry Avenue 22 did not have a mushroom tip when you test fired into the water tank, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that's because there are two different kinds of ammunition. Isn't that true? Sorry.
They have the same caliber. One was a hollow point and one was not.
So there's different types of 22 caliber ammunition, correct?
Different types of projectiles. Yes.
Thank you, sir. No further questions. I would object to a third round, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, just so it's clear, the photograph, or the question by Mr. Sultan about that photograph, whether that shows rust, you don't know if that's dirt or rust. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All rise to the jury.